Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're Random Encounter Productions. I'm Cody Stone. This is GM Academy, and today we're talking cantrips. So, you've come from an older edition, you're looking over 5th, and you come across these weird things called cantrips. Where do they come from? What are they for? Why are they even here? Let's look into it. So if you're curious about cantrips, you got to look at some older editions. When we get into D&D, AD&D, 2nd edition, all the way up into 3 and 3.5, cantrips don't really exist. Occasionally with certain splat books, you can find things called 0-level spells. What is that? They're repetitive magical effects that you can sort of do as long as you have a little bit of magic left in you, but they don't really have a combat application. Those 0-level spells were similar to the non-combat cantrips that we think of today. The rest of the magic system was really designed to mimic something called Vancian magic. It is named after a pulp author from the 50s and 60s, Mr. Jack Vance. And in his world, in the examples that he had, magic was sort of like a massive quadratic formula. It was all of this math and science that you would sort of memorize and cram into your brain, and you would try to hold on to all the bits of it. And then when you wanted to cast the spell, you would speak the answer or the command word or just complete the formula with a gesture, and these massive magical effects would come pouring out. Wizards in that world probably knew and could cast 3 spells, maybe 4, and the rest of their magic came from items that they would have attuned: wands and boots and swords and gloves and hats and all sorts of things like that. But the spells themselves were massive in scale. In D&D terms, they would be 8th, 9th level things where magic would pour out, or for 5th edition, like 6th and above. So that is the idea of magic coming from older D&D editions. And that seems fun for high-level wizards. When you are finally fully wizarding and you can cast more than 2 spells in a day, that feels very wizardly. Where we get into trouble is early wizarding careers in D&D 2nd edition. All of those, even into 3 and 3.5, you would have wizards carrying crossbows. Because they don't want to get in melee. They're far too soft and squishy. They don't wear armor. They have no hit points. But they got to get through that struggle, that early struggle, and it was real. So the only thing they could really be proficient at was a crossbow. They would maybe shoot a bolt. Most of the time they would miss because they wouldn't have the stats to make that tactic effective. And suddenly they don't feel like a wizard. They feel very much like a commoner, very much like a charity project that the rest of the party has to drag through for 5, 6, 8 levels. And then all of a sudden they become a god, and they are solving all of the other problems for the party, and the party is now being carried by the wizard, and it creates a weird party dynamic in those early editions. And it starts to beg the question, how do wizards survive early on if the only thing that they can use is a crossbow? So we get into 4th edition, and 4th edition has many flaws, but one of the things it gets right is the idea that our players are heroes. We want them to be heroes. We want them to have something cool that they can do every single turn, something that says they are a wizard or a sorcerer or a fighter or a ranger or all of those sorts of things. So we come up with at-wills. Bad term for an interesting idea. Take that idea, you move it to 5th edition, we get cantrips. Cantrips widely fall into 2 categories. We're going to start talking about combat cantrips, because this is where you're going to run into them most commonly. And this is also where people are going to maybe have the idea or feel like these magical effects can be spammed, that they aren't limited in any way. But I'm here to tell you that that's the good thing. It's a good thing that they can't be limited, because we want our wizard to feel like a wizard. First of all, as far as spamming things go, swords don't shatter after you swing with them, neither do daggers or axes. Your shield is always there. Bows only run out of arrows if your ranger is particularly absent-minded and your GM is a stickler for weight. But all of those attacks can be repeated ad nauseum. Cantrips allow the wizards to have something similar, but something that is very wizardly, right? And they all come with small little side effects, which are really cool, which are really, I think, one of the wonderful things about them. For example, Chill Touch, a terrible name for a cantrip, because it is neither cold damage nor does it require you to touch them. It should be called Touch of the Grave or Grave Spit or something like that, because it's necrotic damage, first of all, not cold. The hell. And it's got a range. The idea when they describe it is this spectral ghostly hand comes out and boop, boops your enemy, and they take some necrotic damage, and then they can't heal, right? Oof. That's a really cool effect for your bad guy to have, and for your bad guy to be able to utilize against your enemies. So there is that. There's also things like Firebolt. That's the most common one you're going to see from wizards and sorcerers. It's a D10. They have to roll to hit. It's the most consistent one. It's a D10 up until 5th level. Then it gets 2D10. And then I think it's 3, 4, up to 5D10 at the levels. And some of you out there are going, 5D10? What is that? My lord, it's too much. It's too high. But what you look at and you realize is that it's keeping up with the number of attacks that your martial classes are utilizing. And in contrast, your spellcaster, your wizard, your sorcerer, whoever is utilizing this firebolt, or any cantrip, any battle cantrip, because all the damage on the cantrips scale after 5th level, and then I think it's 9th or 10th, about every 5 levels, takes a bump in dice. But that spellcaster is having to commit all of their attacks to one enemy. And if they miss all of it. They suddenly get 0d10, right? Whereas your martial classes, your fighters, your rangers, your barbarians, your rogues even usually have multiple attacks. And so they have multiple opportunities to hit, multiple opportunities to miss as well, but they're getting at least partial damage most of the time. Cantrips that people save against, such as Poison Spray and Toll the Dead, are, again, all or nothing. And if you look at it, you realize most of those cantrips focus on either a dex save, a con save, or a wisdom save. These are the 3 most common saves. These are the 3 strongest saves that your GM monsters are going to have. They're probably going to be good at 2 of those a lot of times. And all of these cantrips are elemental damage, right? They're poison, necrotic, fire, cold damage, radiant damage, all of these sorts of things. And a lot of monsters, especially high-level monsters, especially when we get up into the teens and stratosphere, a lot of these monsters have resistance to more or one or more of those, or flat-out immunity to some of them. Whereas our fighters and barbarians and rogues with just a magic axe, a magic dagger, a magic sword, are going to bypass most resistances, if not all of them. I think really you're thinking about like Tiamat or Strahd, very specific named monsters that have might have some resistances that a magic weapon doesn't get around. So for our battle cantrips, our wizards and sorcerers, they are putting all of their eggs in one basket. They're hoping that the monster doesn't have a resistance, and they have to the type of damage that they are utilizing. Eldritch Blast is the one sort of exception here. It deals force damage. Very few things have resistance to force damage. And it does get multiple attacks, but that's because it is very much specifically for the warlock. And warlocks are their own, they're their own issue. So, what else can we talk about cantrips? Well, the other thing that we want to talk about for 5th edition Magic in general, and cantrips also, is the idea of drama, right? For a cathartic, dramatic action. That's what we're looking for. That's why we tell stories. And D&D as a role-playing game is that storytelling medium. But even as just a pure game, right? Even if we are only into it for the minis and the tactics and the numbers and the dice. If you have a campaign where you have dragged your hero from 1st to level 20, you are going up against your big bad enemy, and you have a wizard that has power word kill or wish or all of those older edition versions of these spells that followed that Vancian idea where magic was this earth-shattering thing. At that point, it's really just a test of initiative. You're probably facing something that has similar magic, but is it a good story? Is it a good experience to get to your final enemy and have your character in 1 or 2 rolls of the dice, probably a spell save, maybe a magic resistance percentile roll, simply be gone, right? All of that time, all of that effort, and suddenly they are but dust in the wind. There might be a story there. There might be the idea that life is cheap, that adventure is dangerous, that war is hell. But is it a good one? Is it why we play the game? Some people, perhaps, we probably decided that's the type of game we were playing. But on the flip side, is it a worthwhile experience to adventure for all the time it requires, face your main enemy, and see them defeated in, again, a singular spell in 1 turn with a few bad rolls? Is that fun? Maybe. Is it a good story? I'm not sure. Does it lessen all the effort that came before? Maybe. All of those are things that you as a group and you as a GM and as a player are going to have to decide where you sit on. Some of them may be worthwhile, but some of them may not be. The other thing we get into when we talk about cantrips is world building. Cantrips ask a very important question. What is the source of magic in your world? Right? We understand that from the player's handbook, druids draw their magic from nature, from the natural world around them. It is their personal connection with it. Wizards are studious. They are intelligence-based. They have learned the secrets of magic the way a physicist might learn the formulas for quantum mechanics. Clerics and paladins, those are divine casters. It is their connection to their deity that allows them to draw on that being's power to enact minor miracles the whole way through. And sorcerers find it as a wellspring within them. So without cantrips, if we are just going to cast leveled spells, does the wizard forget the spells that they have prepared? Do they no longer remember how to cast a first level spell? Without a cantrip, it seems that magic is finite and their ability to manipulate it is finite, but that they are suddenly cut off. It's more troublesome when you get into things like druids and clerics. And are they no longer in touch with their god? Are they no longer attuned with nature? Are there not even the smallest minor effects that they can pull on to do things? And this is where we start to get into non-combat cantrips. Things like prestidigitation, thaumaturgy, and druidcraft are all variations on the same idea. Variations that by having a bit of knowledge about magic, by knowing something of the natural world or having a close relationship with a deity, we can create small effects. It's a lot of things that we see Gandalf do in The Hobbit, right? He looks bigger and his voice booms and shutters open and close. That's all thaumaturgy, right? All things that can be done with prestidigitation, or druidcraft's a little different, but similar ideas. Should these effects take magic levels? Should they require a leveled spell? It's so minor. Probably not. I suppose you could attempt to limit cantrips, but then the idea becomes, why can I not tap into that resource anymore? Why can I not reach my god? Why can I not attune with nature? Am I just too tired? It's a little troublesome. But for your world, it's worth thinking about, where does that magic come from? And is it something that can be replenished? Is it something that can be held on to? I think a fun variant, if you look in the DMG, is the spell point system. And if you were going to use spell points, I would say that's a measurement of somebody's connection to their magical resource, to how much endurance they have in them, how much goodwill they have with their god, how much nature or world around them that they feel connected to. And maybe to be able to use a cantrip, they have to keep one spell point around. They have to at least have a hint, just a taste of it still about. But mechanically for 5th edition, cantrips solve a lot of problems. They allow our wizards, druids, and clerics to do wizard, druidly, and clerically things without expending spell levels. They give them some fun magical effects that they can use outside of combat that are limited. Things that have drawbacks, like friends. Things that, like mold earth, fix imaging problems, right? If you are preparing to defend a village and you want to dig a trench, it's an odd thought of my almighty powerful wizard of 12th level who's got the fancy robes and the hat and he's got the cool stick, but he's got to grab a shovel and a trowel and get in the dirt, or he has the mold earth cantrip and he can just sort of push things around. I think it fixes far more problems than it creates, and it answers some questions about where magic comes from, or at least it indicates, right? It may not outright say it, but I think that it shows us a way. It gives us a hint as to how magic works in these worlds and where it comes from. So And that's my sales pitch on cantrips being a good thing. I can understand that they are a little weird or they're a little out of place. Maybe you think that they have sort of a video game feel to them, but I think it's just such an odd idea that that my wizard has to carry a crossbow, or a wizard has to be a fighter first so they can survive for a few levels and then start to learn magic. I think to really get those archetypes that we crave, I think to really mirror the creatures that we characters that we see in popular culture, that we see in books and novels and video games. I think we need a persistent type of magic, a persistent bit of effect in the world. I think D&D, especially 5th edition, is suffused with magic all the way through, and it should always be present. If your world is different, if you are going for a low magic world, for a medium fantasy or something more Game of Thrones, then by all means, yeah, look at it, adjust it, suit it to your needs. But if we're talking Faerun or Eberron, or just sort of the base idea of 5th edition, magic is everywhere, and it should be. And it's balanced to be. So if you have any questions, let us know down below. Tell us what your favorite cantrip is. I think Toll the Dead has opened up a lot of things for clerics. I think there's a lot of fun ones in there, but I think the most interesting ones, the most magical ones, really, are the non-combat ones. I give any arcane caster I have prestidigitation, but hands down, my favorite is Vicious Mockery. I think it is so thematic for a bard to be able to shout an insult at somebody and for it to deal psychic damage and throw them off their game. And that may not even seem like a magical effect, but it feels like something a bard should be able to do. And so, yeah, Vicious Mockery is my pick. Let me know what yours is down below. Once again, we're Random Encounter Productions. If you like this video, please share it, subscribe. We play D&D. You can find us at twitch.tv/randomencounterprod. We play 5th edition. We also play Ultra Modern. If you are into any of that, we're on Instagram and Twitter. You can find the links down below. But yeah, guys, it's been fantastic talking with you. We will see you next time. But until then, be cool.